We are SETS Puljok.
Good evening, everyone. I am Roshni Shah, co-event manager at SETS Puljok. I will be the host for the today's event, and we have another host, my friend Miss Pratibha Bhandari. So I will let her introduce herself first.
Hello everybody, I am Pratibha Bhandari and I am currently studying aerospace engineering here at Pulsar campus, and I am a third year student, and I am a web master at SETS Pulsar. Thank you.
So today's program about CubeSats has been brought by SETS Puljok, which is a chapter of SETS Nepal. And the SETS Nepal is a national chapter of Student for the Exploration and Development of Space, which has been established by the students at MIT. So today we'll be introducing Mr. Rishabh.
Roshni, you are on mute.
Sorry.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I was mute. Yeah. Today's this space talk series has been brought by SETS Pulchak, which is a chapter of SETS Nepal. SETS Nepal is a national chapter of Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, which works with a motto to promote space education in Nepal. It brings space enthusiasts over the Nepal together to share their ideas and make a firm to work on space-related projects and develop their space education, getting involved in the space talk series like the one we have brought today on attitude controls of CubeSats. CubeSats are small miniature satellites with mass no more than 1.33 kilograms. The first satellite launched by Nepal was also a CubeSat, Nepali Sat 1, as we all know, which was launched along with Cygnus NS1 by US and Ravana 1 by Sri Lanka, okay, which was of 1.3 kilograms and was funded by NAST. So today we have speaker Mr. Rishabh Dungel sir to give his presentation on attitude control of CubeSats. He's an undergraduate from Pulcho campus from the Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering. So regarding all of your curiosities, without any delay, I would like to hand over Rishabh Dungel sir.
Thank you, Rosni. First of all, I feel very honored to be called at this program to talk about my project, and thank you for your introduction too. I am Rishabh Dungel, and I recently finished my bachelor's in communication and electronics engineering from Pulso campus, and this talk that I am about to give will be based on the final year project that I did with my friends, and I'll be sharing my screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, and this project, this talk will be based on the project that was titled "Design and Fabrication of Reaction Wheel-Based Attitude Determination and Control System for CubeSat Applications," and it was done by me and my colleagues Rohit Sagar and Sisir Pantha. And this project was supervised by Professor Nanda Vikram Adhikari from Pulso campus and Mr. Rakesh Chandra Prajapati from Orion Space. And I was about to give introduction on CubeSat, but it was already given beautifully by Rosni. So I think I'll skip this part and we'll be directly going on attitude control and determining. And this talk, I have divided this talk into two parts, in which first of all we'll be talking about determining of CubeSat, and secondly we'll be talking about attitude control system. And on the way we'll find out what are the differences between them, and finally we'll conclude the talk, and I'll be receiving questions if there are any. This part, what is CubeSat, I'll be skipping the part. And before talking about the attitude control system, let us develop a small intuition and scenario of what we will be talking about. And for that, I have. Can you see the new screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And in order to develop the intuition, let us imagine that we have a cube satellite in space, and here is the Earth, and our cube satellite is fitted with a camera. And as the CubeSat moves in its orbit, our CubeSat should make sure that it takes the picture of Nepal as it moves along the space. So the most important role of the attitude control system is to make sure that the payload of our CubeSat faces the way it is supposed to face when it is on the orbit. However, there will be various problems. We need to tackle it before doing the attitude control part. That is, when the CubeSat is ejected into the orbit from International Space Station, due to the uneven force of ejection, it will be spinning on its axis very randomly, and this phenomenon is known as tumbling of the CubeSat. So before making sure that our CubeSat points the way it is supposed to point, we must make sure that the first initial tumbling of the CubeSat is stabilized. So in order to stabilize the initial tumbling of the satellite, we use the system what is known as detumbling of satellite, detumbling system. And after the detumbling, that is stabilizing the rotation of satellite to some minimum value. After then only we activate the attitude control system, and which points to the specific orientation with respect to the Earth. In our case, we'll be assuming that, yeah. Hello.
No, you can continue.
In our case, we'll be assuming that our payload is camera, and we are supposed to face it towards Nepal. And with it, with this scenario, we are ready to tackle the first part of our talk, that is detumbling. As already said, detumbling is the part that is performed when the CubeSat is deployed into the orbit in order to decrease its initial angular velocities. So the particular detumbling algorithm or system that we will be talking about today is based on the utilization of magnetic field of the Earth. So we'll be utilizing the magnetic field of the Earth in order to detumble our CubeSat. Before doing that, let us talk one important thing about the magnet. If we take a needle and place it vertically in one axis, then we all know that the needle will align itself along the magnetic lines of field of the Earth. And another important thing about the behavior of this type of needle is that even if we give a small external disturbance to the needle, it again comes back to its position and align itself as it was doing initially. So this phenomenon is copied as it is in case of CubeSat, and it is utilized in order to detumble the CubeSat. And how it is done is that we take in these slides, this box, although it is a two-dimensional box, let us assume that it is our CubeSat. And what we do is that we place a permanent magnet inside our CubeSat. And as soon as the CubeSat is deployed into the orbit from the International Space Station, the magnetic field of the Earth interacts with the magnetic field of the permanent magnet inside the CubeSat until the permanent magnet aligns itself along the magnetic field of the Earth. And this is exactly how this deep circle works to find the deep angle of certain location in the earth. And by doing this, we have just created the most basic and simple control system that is on the CubeSat. All we need to do is place a permanent magnet and fix it in one side of the CubeSat, and rest is all to the magnetic field of the earth, and they will align themselves. However, this type of control of orientation using permanent magnet is known as passive control. There are several advantages and disadvantages of this control system. That is, the advantages are it is very simple, and no softwares are needed to handle the control system, and it is guaranteed to work as long as we make sure that our magnet is fixed in the body of Cube satellite. However, there are also many disadvantages, and that are we have no active attitude control. That means once the CubeSat is aligned on the magnetic field of the earth, there is no way we can rotate it the way that we want it to be, and we cannot sort it off. That means we cannot suddenly turn off the magnetic field and disable the control system. Similarly, the CubeSat is not locked in three-dimensional space. That means when the magnet that we put as a passive control aligns itself in the magnetic field of the earth, there is still 1 degree of freedom that remains. That is, the CubeSat is allowed to rotate along the axis of the magnet, which means that our CubeSat is not locked in 3D space. That means our CubeSat will still be rotating. So this is the passive determining system that are and can be used in Cube satellite and are very effective, but with some of its own problems. In order to handle this problem, the permanent magnets are now replaced with electromagnets, and in terms of space technology, those electromagnets are known as magnetorquers. There is nothing in terms of difference between electromagnets and magnetorquers. Magnetorquers are itself electromagnets, but it's only that it is known by the name magnetorquers. Now let us suppose that we remove the permanent magnet from our CubeSat and we place 3 magnetorquers in them, each along X, Y, and Z axis respectively. And what are the and the interesting features of the magnetorquers are that we can change the magnitude of magnetic field that it produces, and we can also reverse the polarity. For example, let us assume that currently the magnetorquer A is operating. That means B and C are not fed with current, and A is currently working, and we can see that A is aligned with the magnetic field of the earth. So if we want to rotate the CubeSat by 180 degrees, then all we want to do is change the polarity of this electromagnet A, and if we change the polarity of this electromagnet A, then it will be south north pole, and it has to rotate again to align itself along the magnetic lines of force of the earth. And again, what we can do is that we can disable power to A, and we can power the electromagnet B, and that way we will be pushing B to align itself along the axis of the Earth's magnetic field. So we can clearly observe that by replacing the permanent magnets with magnetorquers, we have control over its orientation. That way, we are not just. It's not like we leave what will happen, but there is control over what we can do for the CubeSat, and this is what electromagnets do. And there are also advantages and disadvantages of using magnetorquers as the devices for determining. And their advantages are that they are simple, because all we need to do to make an electromagnet is make a coil of wire on some core, a ferromagnetic core, and there is no moving parts, so they last longer. in case of motors and things like that, they have to move, and there is possibilities of wear and tear. However, this is not the case in our magnetorquers. And there are some disadvantages that are the amount of magnetic field that our magnetorquers produce is not so large that it can produce fast motion in our CubeSat. That means in order to make this simple, in order to rotate this CubeSat by 180 degrees, we might have to wait for days based on the power of our magnetorquers. And if we increase the power of magnetorquers, that will mean that we have to give more current to it. And as we know, electric current and power supply is very expensive in case of satellite systems. So usually they are not used for orientation control, but only for determining. And in our final year project, we also made 2-axis magnetorquers, and each one of them had 4,700 tons of wire, and they were, and steels were used as core, ferromagnetic core. And we can easily assume that 4,700 tons of wire is not easy to coil in a rod. So we made a simple device that would count the number of tons, and the motor will rotate our shaft until the 4,700 tons were reached. And the reason that we had to make 4,700 rounds of wire was that our expected maximum moment of magnetorquer was 2 ampere meter square, and in order to achieve this, we calculated that the required number of tons will be 4,700. And in terms of the professional built magnetorquers, they usually look like this, because the main concern here is that they are optimized for size and performance. We can easily see that they have not used 3 torque rods magnetorquers, but the third one is year code, because if they had used the third one, in order to make one magnetorquers for each axis, they would have to put one vertically, and that would occupy more space. So the third axis is made year code. This is usually what are done in CubeSats, and these particular photos are taken from internet, which are related to these Cube satellites. And till now, what we did is that we saw what magnetorquers are, and we knew that how magnetorquers operate. But there is still one question. Till now, we talked that we are able to change the magnitude and direction of the current in magnetorquers. But who determines what will be the magnitude and direction of the current in the magnetorquers? And the answer to that is a control law is used. And the most basic and most common control law that is used to drive magnetorquers in CubeSat is known as B-dot controller. And finally, this is where control system comes to play. What the B-dot controller does is that it takes the reading from magnetometer and gyroscope as feedback. That means we all know that the CubeSats are equipped with sensors also. There are sensors like magnetometers, which give the reading of magnetic field intensity of the Earth, and gyroscope, which give the reading of angular velocity of the CubeSat. This B-dot controller takes these values and computes the value of current that we need to feed to the magnetorquers. And most interesting thing about this B-dot controller is that it generates the value of current that makes sure that our CubeSat is determining. That means if we make this sort of CubeSat and we are about to use it in our CubeSat, then we must make sure that there is some control law to drive these magnetorquers. And in terms of block diagram, here is the control system that drives the magnetorquers. Here are 3 magnetorquers, 3-axis magnetorquers, and as we talked initially, the B-dot controller lies here. It takes the magnetic field intensity that is measured by the magnetometer and the angular velocity is in 3 axis that is measured by the gyroscope. Then using this equation, it computes the magnetic moment, and it is the magnetic moment which will determine the CubeSat if we make sure that our magneto-torquer generates the magnetic moment computed by this B-dot controller. So in order to do so, there is one equation that governs the performance of the magnet-torquer. That is, this equation is in terms of current that we feed into the magnet-torquers and the magnetic moment that it generates. So here is the magnetic moment that our magneto-torquer should be generating, and using this magnetic moment, we can compute the current that we need to feed into the magnet-torquer in order to generate this magnetic moment. So by doing this, our control system is complete. In terms of feedback, in order to conclude this diagram, all we can say is that the basic control law in determining system is B-dot controller. It takes feedback from gyroscope and magnetometer, and it produces the magnetic moment for the magneto-torquer. And if we make sure that our magneto-torquer is producing the magnetic moment generated by B-dot controller, our CubeSat will determine, and it's for sure. It's for sure because there is a mathematical derivation that proves that if you use this law, then your CubeSat will determine for sure. And we also did a simulation of the determining our understanding of B-dot controller was correct. In order to do so, we simulated the CubeSat in its orbit that is shown by this diagram, and we gave the initial angular velocities of 0.9, 0.5, and minus 0.8 radian per second in x, y, and z axis respectively. So what we assumed is that when our CubeSat is ejected from the International Space Station, the initial velocity that it gains are these. And by assuming these things and by using this B-dot controller, we found that after 4 orbits, all the angular velocities of our CubeSat are converged to 0. That means this controller successfully kept our CubeSat to rest position, and this is how we validated our B-dot controller. And this was the first part of this talk, in which we talked about how we can decrease the initial high rotation rate of the CubeSat as it is deployed into the orbit. If there is any question regarding the determining part, I'll be happy to receive it now before we go into the ATZ control system, or if there are any confusions.
We don't have any regarding
Yeah.
tumbling, but Triveni Malla has asked, what is the lifetime of a CubeSat?
Lifetime of a CubeSat. That question I think will be answered at the last of this talk, because regarding those questions, we have Mr. Rakesh Chandra Prajapati present in this talk. I think he is best candidate to answer this question. I'll be happy to receive questions regarding the control system and B-dot algorithms.
Okay, sir.
Sure. We proceed now.
Yeah, and we are in the part 2 of the ATZ control system. Till now, we made sure that our CubeSat is not rotating erratically, and by performing the B-dot controller, we have come to the point that we are now able to rotate our CubeSat to the direction, to the orientation that we want it to be. So the heart of the control system will be the device known as reaction wheels. Reaction wheels are the flywheel that are connected to the motor, and in turn that motor will be fixed in the spacecraft body. And how it works is that if we give the angular acceleration to the reaction wheel, the spacecraft move in the opposite direction that is governed by the law of conservation of angular momentum. So if we want to move this platform by in this direction, we need to accelerate our reaction wheel in this direction. This is how the reaction wheel works. And in order to develop more intuition and see it visually, I have one video here demonstrating the one-axis control using reaction wheel. In this demo, the CD compact disc is used as reaction wheel, and brushless motor is used as electric motor. First of all, our platform is on 0 degrees. You can take this arrow as the reference to notice that it is 0 and to notice the change in angle. Now to 90 degrees. From 90 to 70, 8 to 70, sorry. And from 270 to 30. And I like to pause before we see the rotation from 70 to 30. There is one important thing that is very crucial when we implement the system in satellite, because we can see that now this is supposed to go at 30 degrees. That means it will be somewhere, this arrow will be going somewhere around here. So there are two options that this platform can gain this 30-degree orientation. Either it could go from this direction, or it could go from this direction. So if it were a satellite and if it went from this direction, then there will be loss of current and battery power, and that is the least amount. That is what we want to avoid. So we must keep in mind that whenever we implement the reaction wheel-based control system, there is also one criteria that it follow the shortest orientation path between two orientations. I think this gave the basic idea behind how reaction wheel works. And now we'll develop this idea further and see how we can achieve 3-axis control of a CubeSat. Now we saw that by rotating, by putting one set of motor and reaction wheel, we can control a platform in one axis. So if we could fix 3 motors each with a reaction wheel in 3 axes of CubeSat, then we'll be able to control the orientation of CubeSat in all 3 axes. That means we have the complete control over the rotation of the CubeSat. I'd also like to mention that those satellite that are sent into space and those that are very expensive and take longer time to develop, they put 4 set of reaction wheel, because one is used as redundant reaction wheel, so that if any of the 3 reaction wheels are damaged, then the next one can be used. And in order to give idea about in what scale reaction wheel can exist in real space technology, here I have 2 photographs. One is of this is the reaction wheel that is used in International Space Station, and we can see that the size of the reaction wheel is in the scale of the size of man, whereas those reaction wheels that are used to control the CubeSats are very small. So this means that reaction wheels are active technologies and widely used in various important satellite missions like Hubble Space Telescope, because let's say if our Hubble Space Telescope was supposed to point point in particular direction, then those reaction wheels will rotate in such a way that the Hubble Space Telescope point in the direction that it is supposed to point. Again, we discussed about the hardware, and like the one in the determining system, we again arrive at the important question, that is, what determines the value of angular accelerations to the reaction wheel. We talked that angular acceleration that we provide to the reaction wheel is the thing that moves the CubeSat. So our question is, how do we know the value of angular acceleration that we need to put in our reaction wheel to make sure that it achieves the orientation that we want to achieve? And again, like in the case of determining, this is done using control law. And again, this is where the control system comes into play. So if I were to talk about attitude control system in one sentence, it will be something like, attitude control system is a mathematical equation that takes the current orientation and angular velocities of CubeSat as input and determines the angular accelerations for the reaction wheel to decrease the orientation error. So what this means is that the attitude control system is some sort of mathematical equation that looks where our satellite is currently facing, and it also knows where it is supposed to face. And by using those informations, it determines what must be the angular accelerations that we need to feed to our reaction wheel to gain the orientation that it is supposed to gain. But there is one important thing that we are missing till this point in the talk, that is, till now we just talked about orientation as if it were the thing we are already comfortable with. But when it comes to actual implementation of the attitude control system in software, we must have some way of parameterizing the orientation. That means we must have some set of numbers that tells us how our CubeSat is facing with respect to the Earth. So the most popular and most intuitive of all the parameterizing techniques are Euler angles. It uses 3 elements to parameterize orientation in 3D space, that is roll, pitch, and yaw. Roll, pitch, and yaw determines the rotation about x, y, and z axis respectively. This is the example for rocket, and similarly we can extend this idea to satellite. The rotation about x-axis would be roll, about y-axis would be yaw, and about z-axis would be pitch. However, there are some things that makes this intuitive and simple Euler angles less attractive to the attitude control problem, and the reasons are, without getting too deep into the mathematics, what I want to convey from this equation is that this is the equation that governs the Euler angles. And as we can see that there is 1 by cos theta term. So it is easy to assume that for some value of theta, the cos theta will be 0, and for that value, the right hand side of this equation will be infinity. So this shows that there is probability for Euler angle to gain singularity. The point where Euler angles value get infinity is known as singularity. That is one major drawback of Euler angles. And another drawback is that we can see that the equation governing the Euler angles consist of all transcendental functions, that is sine, cos, and tan thetas. And it is known fact that whenever we want to implement transcendental functions in digital platform like our onboard computer or microcontroller, they are computationally heavy. These are the 2 reasons that makes Euler angle less attractive. And there is another technique that we can use to parameterize rotation, that is known as quaternions. Unlike Euler angles, which use 3 roll, pitch, and yaw, 3 elements to parameterize rotation, the quaternions are the parameterization of orientation that uses phone numbers. And the most important thing is that quaternions are computationally efficient and they do not suffer from singularity or Kimball law. And we can easily see that the equation that governs the quaternion, there is no presence of transcendental function, and there is also no 1/2 can never be 0. So we can validate by just seeing the equations. And there is, in order to be comfortable with quaternions, there are a lot of things that we need to consider, but I will just like to wrap up this topic of quaternion by saying that, can you see my video?
Yeah.
Let's say this is the coordinate system of our CubeSat, and RGB is x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis respectively. And let's assume that our CubeSat is facing this direction right now, and in order for our camera to take picture of Nepal, we want it to face this way. So what quaternions is all about is that there are 4 set of numbers which can say that my satellite is oriented in this way, and if I change my orientation like this, then there will be another set of 4 numbers that will determine my new quaternion. So all we can understand about quaternion without getting confused is that these are set of 4 numbers which define the orientation of our CubeSat with respect to the Earth. So, and again, we'll be going into the flow chart of the control system of the attitude determination system. And before that, I'd like to say that if we suppose that this is the current attitude of our CubeSat and we want to face it this way, then what we can say is that our control system should take the final orientation and current orientation and should produce the angular acceleration that when we feed to our reaction wheel, should make sure that our orientation is changing from the current to desired orientation. And there is also this is also a short note on orientation, that is, we talked that we'll know the current. I just mentioned that we will have the knowledge of current orientation of our CubeSat as if it was simple thing, but it is not, because finding the orientation of the CubeSat with respect to the Earth in itself is another complex topic, and it is known by the name of attitude estimation. But from the higher level of view, what we can say is that our CubeSat will be equipped with sensors like magnetometer, which will have knowledge about the magnetic field intensity of the Earth, sun sensor, which will know the angular position of sun with respect to the CubeSat, and the star sensors, which will know its attitude by finding its position relative to the positions of the stars. So there is another system known as attitude estimation, which takes the values of these sensors and determines where it is rotating with respect to the Earth. So with all those background knowledge, I think we are ready to dive into the attitude control system block diagram of the CubeSat. And in this block diagram, the things that we are already familiar with are reaction wheels and target quaternion and attitude estimation block. So what is happening is that target quaternion is the orientation that I want my CubeSat to be in. Let's say if I want my camera to be facing towards Nepal, then the 4 value of quaternion should be 1001, let's say, and 1000, let's say, and that will be my target quaternion. And the feedback quaternion will be, there will be sensors on the satellite, these sensors, and these sensors will give the value to the attitude estimation program, and that will determine the current orientation of the satellite. So we have desired orientation and the current orientation, and from that we can compute the error quaternion. And what our control law does is that it produces the value of angular acceleration to the reaction wheel, which will reduce the error quaternion. That means reducing the error quaternion means bringing our current orientation to the desired orientation. That means in our analogy, our CubeSat will be facing toward Nepal. So, and in terms of to make this block diagram complete, I've also written the control law that we used in our project, and this control law, what it does is that it takes the angular velocity from the gyroscope measurements, and it takes the error quaternion by using target quaternion and the current value of orientation, and it produces the torque that our reaction wheels needs to achieve in order to reduce this error quaternion. So, and before, and there could be a question, that is this the only control law that is available to us? And if that is the question to any one of us, the answer is no. There are wide varieties of control law based on our mission requirements, and we have selected this particular control law in our project because of these 4 reasons, and they are: it is formulated in quaternions. I've already told that using quaternions in the attitude control problem eliminates the problem that would have come if we had used Euler angles. So this control law is formulated in quaternion, as we can see quaternion terms here. And another feature of this particular control law is that it works for large orientation errors. What happens in control theory is that most of the time when we deal with the nonlinear system, we assume the small deviation from our required position, and we linearize the dynamics of the system we want to control and use the linear control law. And if we had done that, then our control system would not work for the large orientation error. But in our case, this control law is non-linear, so it works for any large orientation error. That means if our current satellite position is this, and we want completely opposite orientation, then this control law supports this movement. And another feature is that we have proved the global analytical proof, the analytical proof of global convergence for our control system. That means there is mathematical proof that if we use this control law, this particular control law, then it will work for all set of initial conditions. That means if certain control law do not have its analytical proof of global convergence, then that would mean that there could exist some particular values of initial condition for which our control law might collapse or might produce values that will destroy our control system. So that is not the case in this particular control law. And finally, this control law also makes sure that the path it follows to achieve the final orientation is the shortest path between those orientation, like the one that I talked about in the one-axis example. And there is also a result that I want to show that we simulated in order to check the implementation of our control law. In this diagram, what we can observe is that the initial orientation of our CubeSat is described by these 4 numbers, which is a quaternion. That means Q1 is 0.0654, and this is 0.98, and this is 0.1487, and this is 0.0199, and the set point is 0001. I have put this 0001 for the sake of simplicity, so that I can easily show the result, and we can easily see that it started with the values that we provided in initial condition, and finally all those quaternion elements converge to some certain value. And if we look at those values, we can see that this one converges to 0, this one to 0, this one to 0, and this one to 1. And we can see that our initial quaternion has converted to our set point. That means that our CubeSat, which was currently facing in the unwanted direction is now facing in the direction that we want it to face in. And this another diagram is the profile of angular velocities of the CubeSat in each axis as the control system was running on. And this shows that all these angular velocities are also converged to 0. That means that our CubeSat has attained our final position and it is no longer moving. That is also important, because if at this point the angular velocity will last, then that will mean that our CubeSat have attained the final orientation, but it is still moving, and it is not something that we want. And this is the final slide of regarding the present topic. And as conclusion, I noted some points, and those are: today we talked that CubeSats need determining after being deployed into the orbit, and determining is done by utilizing Earth's magnetic field using permanent magnets or magnetotorquers. We saw advantages and disadvantages of both of them, and we also saw that attitude control system can be performed using reaction wheels, and we also concluded that quaternions are attractive. And finally, and the most important one, is that we saw that control law plays an important role to determine the performance of CubeSat in attitude control system. This is crucial point, because if we had no control law, then we will not be able to drive our magnetotorquers or our reaction wheels. And finally, there are some references that I like to include, and these references are those that we studied during our project. And if any one of us found this talk interesting and would like to pursue it further, then I have categorized the reference in different categories. That is, if regarding the dynamics of satellite, that is the equation that governs the rotation of satellites and things like that, the book by Hans-Peter Schwab, that is Analytical Mechanics of Space System, is very good. And this selection is based on our team, so that is why we are that is why we think they are good. And there are 3 books that we like to recommend for ADCS. The first one is Attitude, Spacecraft Attitude Determination and Control. In fact, this is one of the first book that tried to cover the whole topic of the attitude control system for spacecraft. And due to its historical reason and due to the effort of many talent persons that went into to make this book is very important in that sense. And the next 2 are the book that has tackled the topic of attitude determination and control system of CubeSat from modern point of view. And the control system that we implemented in the project are from Martley and Crasidis, Fundamental of Spacecraft Attitude Determination and Control. And finally, if someone want to look into orbital mechanics of satellite, for example, this diagram of satellite actually moving above the Earth, then the book that we like to recommend is one by Howard Curtis, that is Orbital Mechanics for Engineering Students, and it is recent book also. So these are the references that we like to recommend, and thank you.
Thank you, Risubhai, for your insightful presentation. It was very intriguing while also being very detail-oriented. And I hope many of us here in the audience have learned a lot about CubeSat and the attitude control system. And I also think many of us who are on the way to 4th year project have been inspired by your presentation as well. And now let's move on to the next session, that is Q&A. So I think we are already starting to have questions, and I request all of you who have questions regarding the presentation or anything closely related to the presentation, please drop questions in the chat box, or please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question directly. So I'd like to move on. The first question was from Triveni Malla, and what is the lifetime of a CubeSat? And as previously stated, Savdai told us that Rakesh sir is more suitable for this question.
I mean, I could just say the numbers, but I'm sure that you will give reason for those numbers, so I like to recommend it.
Okay, so I'd like to get Mr. Sir.
Thank you for the question and Risa forwarding the question. I mean, we have like Saurabh also, who is also working in the satellite project. So basically the idea is that the life, it depends upon I mean, there are different parameters to look at. One is the altitude, how high the satellite is. So if it's very far away, the life is obviously going to be quite longer. But if we come back to our interest, which is low Earth orbit, and even more some numbers like 500 kilometer or 400 kilometer. So if the orbit, for example, International Space Station, which is around 400 kilometer from the Earth. So around that distance, if the satellite is orbiting along with International Space Station, and again, we have to check the size and mass of the satellite, because we have to check the atmospheric drag. So we have two parameters to look at. One is how high the satellite is orbiting, and what is the atmospheric drag of the satellite, and which depends upon the mass and cross-sectional area of the satellite. So coming back to now CubeSat, so for low Earth orbit, I would say it can be like 2 years or more. For example, the satellite that I worked, which is SwissCube, the CubeSat built in Switzerland, it was launched in 2009, and it is still orbiting. But then it was launched, deployed or launched at very high altitude, I guess 600 or maybe 700 kilometers, you know, far higher than like 400 or 500 kilometer. I mean, International Space Station, which is 400. So given that parameter, typical CubeSat can take 2 years. And there is another satellite which is called ThinSat, and they are launching at altitude around 200 kilometer. So ThinSat, they have lifetime of 4 or 5 days only. So you can imagine now, like, you know, it can be few days or years or months. So typically the CubeSat can be, we assume, a couple of months, like 8-9 months to a couple of years. But then the other satellite which are very far away, like geostationary, like those, it will be higher. So we can see different parameters to answer this question, but typically coming back to CubeSat at low Earth orbit, I would say a couple of years, 1-2 years, 5 years, like that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh sir. So I'd like to move on to the next question. And here Viraz Khadka asks, how is the attitude control system of miniature sat compared to that of a bigger satellite?
I think the answer is same. I mean the control system that we just talked about in general is known as control system for spacecraft. So from the eye of the control system, there is no difference. But the difference comes when selecting the motor. For example, if we were to control the orientation of the CubeSat, then we'll select the motor with less torque when compared to the motor that we'll be selecting for our International Space Station. So the basic mathematical foundation and analysis techniques are same. The choice of materials and the scale of the problem is the only difference, as far as I know the topic.
Thank you, Dai. I think Viraz got his answer. So next is from Abhimanyu Khadga. He asks how it's different from gyroscopic approach of orientation. I think he is talking about the orientation mechanism.
Yeah. and I think that question I think is very important from the point of the topic that I mentioned in the talk, and it is attitude estimation. So there are two ways that we can tackle the problem of finding the orientation of the CubeSat with respect to the Earth, and those are: number one is using the sensors that give us information about the surrounding of our environment. That is, when we measure the magnetic field, and when we measure the orientation of sun with respect to the satellite, and when we measure our orientation with respect to the far stars. And that approach is known as attitude determination approach. In that approach, gyroscopes are not used. Just the information about the environment is used, and it is used to localize the CubeSat in terms of orientation with respect to the Earth. And regarding the part of question that he asked, the gyroscopes are also used to determine the orientation for CubeSat. And the scenario that it is used is like this. Let's say our CubeSat for our implementation of our control system, we need the sensor values at 100 hours, but all our sensor give us the value at 50 hours. So there is a problem, because the sensors that we have provide the data very less when compared with our requirement. So what is done is that by using the sensor values between those two steps, we interpolate the motion that our satellite could be moving by using the gyroscope data. That means to wrap it all, the values of the angular velocities values of gyroscope are used in attitude orientation determination, and the subsystem that does it is known as attitude estimation, and it is usually done when we need sensor values at higher frequency, I think.
Thank you, Dai, and I think Abhimanyu, you got your answer, and thank you for your question. And next question is from Vivek Parajuli. He asks, can we physically visualize the quaternions like the Euler angles?
I think yes, we can, and this is also one of the major problems that we faced. And when we were working on the project, we had lots of meeting and brainstorming with Rakesh sir, who is present here. And yes, it is possible to visualize quaternions like the way we do for Euler angles. And I think the time frame that we have now is not possible to convey it. I like if you contact us personally.
Rishabh, maybe it was good to explain in 2 dimension, like a complex number, where we see the easy to,
I'll try to explain it in what way we can visualize the quaternions. First, I'll again take this model and I'll try to explain. First of all, let's say we were using the Euler angles, and this is RGB XYZ. And if I say that I want to go roll 30, piece 30, and yaw 30, then what I'll do is I'll rotate this by 30-degree roll, G piece 30, and yaw 30. And this is the final orientation, and this is easy to visualize. But when we talk in terms of quaternion, there is another way that we can represent the quaternion, and that is first term, last 3 terms of quaternion represents a vector in 3-dimensional space. And that is, let's say if it is coordinate system and you have your quaternion, and what you do is you see the last 3 terms of your quaternion and they represent some vector. This is the vector that the last 3 terms of your quaternion gives. And if you look at the first element of your quaternion and take cos inverse of that first element, then you will get a value. And what it represents is that it represents the rotation about this axis which was represented by last three elements of the quaternion. So to wrap this all up, what we can say is that last three terms of quaternion determines a vector in three-dimensional space, and first term helps us determine our angle. And how we can interpret the whole picture is that our rotation is by the angle given by first term, and we rotate by that angle about the axis that was given by last three terms. I think that will help.
Thank you, Dai. I think Vivek, you got your answer. And next question is again from Biraz. He asks, how is the control? Sorry, I think I missed a question. Quaternion control and reaction wheel controllers control attitude or the orientation. It's asked by Vivek Ladkarna.
Yeah, and I think it was the most important part of the talk, and what I should have told at the beginning is that attitude and orientation are same thing when we are talking about it. So controlling orientation means controlling attitude. In space technology, orientation is often called by the name of attitude.
Thank you, Dai. Now, next question is from Biraz again, and it is, how is the control law determined for the particular satellite?
I think there are several ways that we can use to determine the control law, but since the one that we talked about was nonlinear control law, so I'll go from the perspective of the control law that we presented in this talk, and it is that I think I'll give keywords rather than explaining the thing, and it goes like this. First of all, what we do is what is known as find the Lyapunov function, and what that Lyapunov function should do is that it must produce the value 0 whenever our orientation error is decreasing. So I think the answer will be, in order to develop different control laws for different system and to check the performance of the control law, first we need to make sure that we have some Lyapunov function, and we need to check if the Lyapunov, the technical term is positively definite. That means our Lyapunov function should always be either positive or 0 and should not be negative. And we see that it is the case or not in our system. Then if it is the case, then we can derive our control law from that Lyapunov function.
Thank you, Dai. Again, we have next question. Thank you, Viraz. From Sandeep, he asks, how this control law rejects noise from sensors and external disturbances?
Rejecting noise from sensor, yeah, there are two answers in this question, and the first one is rejecting noise from sensor, and that is the task of the one that I mentioned, that is attitude estimation part of the software. That means dealing with the statistical sensor noise is the task of that orientation part. And how it operates is that, let's say I have one sensor that gives me magnetic field of the earth, and what I need to do is that find the statistical noise characteristic of that sensor. That means I need to find the noise covariance of that sensor, and if I am able to find the noise covariance of that sensor, then there is algorithm known as Kalman filter, which, when given the noise characteristics of the sensor and the mathematical model of your system, then it produces the optimal sensor data. That means it removes the sensor noise from the system. And in order to so that I'll like to share my screen and show some result. I think that will be very relevant to the question that is and this is the one of the this is the report. This is the final year report that we talked about, and the part of question that he asked is, let's say I have a gyroscope, and this is the noise characteristics of the gyroscope, and we can see that the true bias, this blue colored, is the noise that is actually present in the gyroscope. Whereas if we know the actual statistical noise characteristic of the gyroscope, we can estimate the bias, and it is easily demonstrated by this graph. We can see that the true bias is being estimated by this red color, that is bias estimate. So yeah, there exist algorithms with which we can estimate the noise characteristics of our sensors too, and by using those systems we can correct our sensor readings. And that is the first part of the question. And the second part is external disturbance. And the external disturbance, rejecting external disturbance of the CubeSat in attitude control system comes under the characteristic of control system, which is known as robustness. So we need to make sure that our sensor, our control law is robust. And by robust, what we mean is, let's say the current state of my control system is taking certain error and it is supposed to give certain output. But if I forcefully change my system, does it behave the way that we want to behave? Because the system has already been changed. So if our control system is robust, then it is the part that is supposed to reject the external disturbance. And in terms of analysis, no, in our project we have not performed the external disturbance analysis of the control system, but yes, control system is the one that is supposed to reject the external disturbance.
Thank you, Dai. It helped a lot. We have a second query from Vivek Parasali again. He asks, does this control law produce the errors while determining the orientation of CubeSat? If so, how can we minimize it?
The part that is supposed to produce the error while determining the orientation of the CubeSat is completely another part from the control law. That means determining the orientation of CubeSat comes under the heading of attitude estimation or attitude determination. So control law do not changes the way that the orientation of CubeSat is determined, but there are ways control law can change that. For example, let's say you have a magnetometer in your circuit and you place the wire of your motor below the magnetometer, and if you run your motor off your reaction wheel, then the value of magnetometer will change, because due to the magnetic noises the current produced on the magnetometer. If we look from those type of mistakes that we can do in the circuit, then yes, control law can change the way we view the orientation of CubeSat. But if our sensors are shielded and things like that, then control law does not do that, because the subsystem of the satellite that deals with the orientation is attitude estimation, not the control system.
Thank you, Dai. I hope, Vivek, you got your answer. And next is Linla. I guess I pronounced it right. Do you have the environment model in your simulation, and how to know when we need to use Euler angles or coordinates?
Yes, we have environmental model in our simulation, and those environmental models are effect of gravity, and we generated the magnetic field using the mathematical model known as IGRF model that gives us magnetic field of the Earth if we provide latitude, longitude, and height of the satellite. And we also have the simulation of aerodynamic disturbance that our CubeSat might face when it is in its orbit, and those are the environmental model that we have implemented in our simulation. And how to know when we want to use Euler angles and quaternions. I think in case of let's say using there are, let's say for example, if I am using Euler angles, then I need to find the control law that are globally, that can globally converge when we feed Euler angle into it. I mean, what I mean to say is the reason that we used Euler angles and quaternions and not Euler angles is because there is one fundamental limit of the Euler angle, and that is if we implement our control system in Euler angles, and then there always exists some values of roll, pitch, and yaw under which our control system might collapse. So first we did the literature review, and we had meetings about it, and we decided that since quaternions are highly preferable, and most importantly, most of the modern attitude determination and control laws are written in quaternions. So due to those reasons, we went with quaternions.
Thank you, Dai. I hope you got your answer. Thank you, Linha. Now, the next question, and probably the last question of tonight, is from Sunil Khatka. He asks, what's about the power for the operation of CubeSat and its parts? Does it work on self-charging process or what?
I think I'll again like to forward this question to Mr. Rakesh Chandra Prajapati or Mr. Saurabh.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Risa, for the question. Yeah, basically for the CubeSat, if we talk about CubeSat, it's the solar panel that we're using. So CubeSat, again, like low Earth orbit, so we have a sunlight that we can convert the sunlight into electricity using solar panel. And we are completely based upon this power that we generate with the solar panel. But again, if we generalize the question, for example, if we are going into interplanetary or galactic, I mean, that's quite far away, but still, like if we are going far from the sun and then we cannot get the sunlight to generate the electricity, in such scenario, we have radioactive power generator, for example. So it depends what kind of mission or where you are. And coming back to in our interest, which is CubeSat and low Earth orbit, and we have sunlight, so we use we are always dependent upon this. Again, I would like to add another topic. As our interest is in low Earth orbit, and in the beginning we talked about this magneto-torquer. So this magneto-torquer is only working for the low Earth orbit in when it is moving around the Earth magnetic field. So if you are going to another planet where we have less magnetic field, or maybe, you know, if we are leaving the Earth, and then it might not work. So magneto-torquer is not working everywhere, the control mechanism. So you have, as Risa already mentioned, that it depends upon the mission, the technology, how you want to control. So if you are just considering to use magneto-torquer, it works only in the Earth magnetic field. You have to be careful. Another thing that you need to be, I mean, you need to consider that the magnetic field of the Earth at 500 kilometer, or, you know, at low Earth orbit, it's very, very small. So to generate the torque to rotate the CubeSat or any satellite using the magneto-torquer, we need lots of current. So which was also discussed in the presentation by Risa. So you have to be careful, like what kind of environment, the mission, or where you want to use it. So everything you need to look into. It's not like one straight design method. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rakesh sir, and thank you, Rishabh Dai, for making this session so informative. And for those who have not been following the chat box, Rishabh Dai here says, I think I made it confusing regarding the choice of quaternions, but I would say that most of the modern attitude, estimation, and determination are being researched and studied in quaternions. So I think that would be a well enough reason. Thank you, Rishabh, again. And I would like to also thank all of us in the audience for making this session of Q&A so interactive. And so I'd like to move on to the next session, that is thanking note. And I would like to welcome Biraj Khadka, the president of SETS Pulchok. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Did you guys have a great time into this talk? If you asked me that question, I'll answer by yeah. I had a great time into this talk, and I hope you guys did too. So we would like to thank our guest speaker, Mr. Rishabh Dungal, for sparing time out of his busy schedule to join with us and sharing valuable information and insights about the control mechanism involved in satellites. The control law, the non-linearity, the control law is so vast that it's very difficult to explain those mathematical expressions in this short time. And I really appreciate your capacity to explain such complex stuff simply. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Rakesh sir for explaining stuff about satellites other than control law, and my lovely audience and colleagues for making this event successful. And I want to share, last but not the least, I want to share exciting news for Pulchok, only for Pulchok students. So we are going to make a CubeSat, a small CubeSat. So if you guys really want to join our CubeSat team, feel free to fill the general form. So we have the link pinned on our Facebook page. So you can go to our Facebook page, SETS Pulchok, and fill the form there. And yeah, and you can be the member and join our team. So lastly, I really appreciate your companionship, all of you. So good night, everyone. Thank you.